Okay, so we're doing something new. I made the decision on my own without consulting with the religious committee that I would Zoom the Friday evening service to allow us to be able to see each other like we are seeing each other now, and be able to recite Kaddish. So that has been a source of debate among conservative rabbis as to exactly how to conduct services now virtually in a way that people can still be able to feel like they're part of the community, and especially to be able to recite Kaddish. Now, I just want to say Kaddish is not the most important part of the service to be recited, but most people feel that the only reason to have a service is to recite the Kaddish. So the idea of wanting to remember the loved one, either if we're in the, God forbid, in the course of the 30 days or the 11 months of saying Kaddish, or for a yard site, that's a crucial way to be able to honor their memory. We come to Minyan, well, we light the yard site candle at home, but we come to Minyan, we say Kaddish, and that way we feel as if we are making this connection to our loved one and also doing this ancient practice. And so I want to be able to provide that format for you. So I'm not conducting daily evening services, and we're not doing the morning service because I'm just not sure that we would be able on our own to get a minyan every day through Zoom. But Rabbi Stephen Abraham is doing it, and I don't know if people have joined his Zoom minyan, but at least we're helping them to make a minyan, and I think by us joining in with another congregation like that to enable a Zoom minyan to occur, I think that's doing a mitzvah. We do live stream, and we have been live streaming as usual, and I feel comfortable with that on Shabbat. So that's the question for me, how to feel comfortable with this technology on Shabbat. And different rabbis have different levels of comfort, not just in terms of actually knowing how to use the technology. That part of the comfort I'm not talking about. What I'm talking about is using technology on Shabbat, whether I'm comfortable personally and according to Jewish law using this technology on Shabbat. So there are some of my colleagues who normally are not comfortable using technology on Shabbat, who, because of this pandemic, have said that they will. Others, like myself, have said, I'm just not comfortable using this on Shabbat, and I don't think we need to do this on Shabbat in order to create this sense of community. So what I have agreed to do, what I thought to do, is Zooming Friday night, because the 6 o'clock service is now more than an hour before Shabbat begins. So because of that, I feel comfortable doing Mincha, the weekday afternoon service, and also Kabbalat Shabbat, the introductory service of Friday night, by Zoom. Those are elements that can be done, and even places, for example, that don't use musical instruments on Shabbat, that's not us, but other places that don't use musical instruments on Shabbat would allow them, if it's early before candlelighting time, to use the musical instruments for the Kabbalat Shabbat service. So you can make that distinction between Kabbalat Shabbat, like the service that has Lecha Dodi in it and the other songs in it, that you can do that with musical instruments, and therefore you can do the technology stuff during that too. So we're going to try that this week, see how it works. And from 6 o'clock till about 6:30 or so, that'll be the Zoom format. I'll have everybody on mute because, and I'll just start that right from the beginning. I'm sorry. We'll start before 6, have the opportunity to schmooze and get together. I will mute everyone once the service begins, and when it gets to the Kaddish, then I'll unmute everybody so that we can, whoever needs to recite the Kaddish can, and you can hear the Amen and the other responses in it. And then when the service is over, we'll keep going a little bit for schmoozing too, to kind of have like an oneg without the food. You can bring your own food, but there's no, that we haven't figured out yet. How to, like Star Trek, how to transport something from one place to another. What was that? Beam me up, Scotty, that kind of thing. We can't beam up the food from the oneg, so we can all salivate over each other's oneg if we want to, so we can hang out for a few minutes after the service that way as well and schmooze. So we'll do that this Friday night. The only problem is that the following Friday night is the Friday night doing Passover, and it's Yontiv already on Friday. It's the second day of Passover leading into Shabbat, so we won't be Zooming that Friday night. But we'll just have a regular live stream service at 6 o'clock. So I hope that new Zoom format will work this week. I hope, I'm trusting. We've had over 30 people watch at some point during the live stream the past 2 Friday nights. So I'm hoping that a similar number, if not more, will give the Zoom a try. So if anybody has any questions or comments, just go to the bottom of your screen and go to chat. Just click on the word chat, and then you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen, chat will come up, a place to where it says type message here, and hi Florence, and I can do the questions that way. Okay, so that's about Shabbat. We'll also have a Passover resource email page that's going to be coming out shortly. So I want to make sure, Elaine, that you are. Okay, I'm muting everybody. Okay, that did it. Okay. So I covered what I wanted to cover with the Zooming. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Passover some more. I went through it very quickly last week to talk about how to kosher our homes for Passover. And so I wanted to know first, before I continue the discussion about preparing for Passover, if anybody else had a question who was here last week who wanted to ask a question about that today. Anything about the koshering of the kitchen to get ready for Passover, if you have any questions about that. And as you're thinking about that, there is, you'll see on the Passover resource page, I'm going to be posting a link to this, which is from the Rabbinical Assembly. And there's also a supplement to that, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today, is this from the Rabbinical Assembly, updated kashrut guidelines in light of the pandemic and how that's impacting us being able to purchase kosher for Passover food. So I wanted to get into that element. How do we buy kosher for Passover food, and what's involved in that? Okay. So Marlene, this is confusing. I see your face in one screen, but I see your name in another screen. So that's pretty amazing that you can be in 2 screens at once. So it's possible that somebody else in your family is on your technology and using your name. So, okay. So, kosher for Passover food. So we're all we're all in the same boat in that we are stuck to we're all in the same boat in that we are all now we all have to do Passover ourselves, and so that in other words. I'm sorry, I was doing something else at the same time. So even though we might have had the plan to go away for Passover, we might have planned to be with family for Passover, not in our own homes. You know, there's only a couple of times in my history of being an active pulpit rabbi that I've actually been able to take Passover off and be away for the holiday. And what a machaya that was. And that when Passover is is the holiday of freedom, Zman Matan Cherutenu, the time of giving of our freedom, that's what it's referred to. You only feel free if you don't have to observe Passover, because all these guidelines seem like such an added burden to our life that we actually, well, I won't speak for you, I'll speak for me. It's a tremendous burden to have to do everything the right way. And you wonder while we're in the midst of the preparation, what it means to be free. So, so we all now are forced to observe Passover in some way, in a way that we are going to be able to observe Passover that we're comfortable with. And I wanted to go through what we can do to make our homes as kosher for Passover as possible. So I went through last week about koshering the kitchen and what from the easiest of all possible, which is to close your kitchen off and just do disposable and just have non-perishable food on a countertop and just eat with paper goods. That's the easiest thing to do. You could clean out a section of your refrigerator to have you know, other fruits and vegetables, things like that, to store in your refrigerator. But that would be the easiest way to do, and I would not recommend that because it limits exactly what you're going to be able to eat. What I would recommend is doing some level of kashrut of your kitchen that you can do in order to allow you to have food for Passover. And that's what we talked about last time. Now, to get this food for Passover, it shouldn't be so difficult to do. What is challenging is if you do not feel comfortable going out of your home to go to a supermarket. So I understand that completely, and that could be a challenge. So hopefully you were aware of that 2 weeks ago, that would be a challenge, and that you could have placed an order with Shalom's or Moti's to get food delivered to you. But now I'm not so sure that. So you can't have prepared meals delivered to you, but I do believe that Shalom's and Moti's is still delivering food. There's a huge delivery charge that I heard about from somebody. But if you're willing to pay the delivery charge, you can get food delivered to you. I'm not sure about the supermarkets. I've heard that Whole Foods, for example, for those of you who are I'll get to the searching for chametz in a moment, Diane. I understand that for those of you who are Amazon Prime members, that also is connected with Whole Foods, and you can order food delivered from Whole Foods. Other supermarkets offer delivery services as well, but I'm not sure how instantaneous the delivery service is. In other words, is it still same day, or because of the virus, you're going to have to wait a while? I have an impression that you'd have to wait a while for those deliveries. So the idea behind this is how to get food for Passover. So if you have members of the family who can go shopping for you and drop off food for you, that would be one way to do it. If you venture out with latex, if you can venture out with latex gloves and a mask or some kind of bandana or scarf around your face, then I would do that. The supermarkets that I've been to have wipies there for the carts, so it should be a manageable experience. So Milton, you're saying Shalom's just stopped yesterday delivery. So I'm not so sure about that because I was in Shalom's yesterday, and a lot of Shalom's workers had like pieces of paper, and they were filling carts which looked like delivery items. So I think they are still doing it. They're like 5 different Shalom's people walking around the supermarket, putting in the Passover food based on the order sheet that they had in their hand, and I think that they are still doing delivery. So you say they have a $30 delivery charge. That's cheap based on what Rita Rubenstein told me, that Moti's was a $60 delivery charge. So it might be worth it to you, though, to pay the delivery charge if you have a fear of going out to the supermarket, and rightly so. And so it's just a shame that these delivery charges are getting added on to it. So there is a way to get food delivered to you. Now, the idea is that what foods do you need to have delivered to you, or what foods do you need to purchase that is special just for Passover? So the whole idea behind this is because, and Diane, I won't forget your question about the feather and candle. I'm going to try to keep it there on the side of my screen, so I'll get to it. The whole idea about getting food special for Passover, Rita, you have a question? No, because you don't have a question. Okay, because you raised your hand. You have an icon there, so I'm lowering your hand for you. Alan, you have a question.
Yeah, Rabbi, we just had delivered about 10 minutes ago a $300 delivery from Shalom.
Yes.
It was perfect. It was a $30 charge, and that included the gratuity. And we haven't even opened it up. It's still outside.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, Alan, for sharing that, and much appreciated. And so so Alan and Beverly got a delivery today, only $30 for that, including the gratuity for the deliverer, the driver. So that's reasonable, and I would okay. So right. So how long? So Diane just wrote in saying that Marvin is calling Shalom to find out if you place an order today, when do you get it delivered? Okay, so that's very helpful. But I was in the store yesterday. Lenore and I went to Shalom's yesterday. There weren't that many people there. The shelves are pretty well stocked. They even had toilet paper and paper towel, which don't need to be kosher for Passover, but they have plenty of toilet paper there and plenty of paper towels. So if you've been needing those items, Shalom's has them. I didn't check the price because we didn't need them, but I was almost willing to buy it. But Lenore says no, we didn't need it. So anyway, it wasn't very crowded, the supermarket, and they're pretty well stocked with everything. We personally like the boxed, the mix, the cake mixes, and we like coffee cake. They're out of coffee cake. So, but if you like the brownie mix, if you like yellow cake mix, other things like that, they had that there. But if you like coffee cake mix from the box, Shalom's was out of that. Okay, the whole idea about buying food for Passover is okay. Thanks for that message, Milt. About where there's an app that I read about somewhere, either Washington Post or I saw it on Facebook. Somebody's creating an app that will tell you what stores in the area has has what items. So if you're technologically inclined with your phone, you can look for that, Google that to find out what I'm talking about. Okay, the whole idea of food for Passover is because you can't have any chametz at all, any grain products mixed in with your food for Passover. As I mentioned last time, the whole idea of koshering for Passover is all about the idea that you can't have even a microscopic drop of chametz in your food, because even if you had a drop of dairy in your meat food or vice versa, and you had that by accident during the year, it doesn't trafe up your food. So accidents are allowed to happen during the year, but accidents with chametz on Passover are not allowed to happen. So that's why Passover food and Passover preparations are that much more burdensome, because you're not allowed to build in a mistake or doing your best. So during the year, you're allowed to do your best and understand that you make a mistake, and if it's unintentional, it's okay, and everything will be fine, and you haven't trafed anything up. But on Passover, you're not allowed to build in this accident. So what that means is that we have to be that much more diligent about right. So Marlene's just putting in about Costco, and if you look in your chat, you'll see what she said about this early this morning. There weren't that many people there at Costco. So I haven't ventured to Costco myself at all during these 3 weeks, but I'm hoping not to have to get there at all. So there are certain items that, how they are made, never have chametz in them, so that they don't need a kosher for Passover symbol. Okay, so let me say that again. There are certain food items that by their nature don't have chametz in them, that therefore do not need to have a kosher for Passover symbol on it. And there's no reason to have to buy, for example, kosher for Passover eggs, kosher for Passover fruit, kosher for Passover vegetables. Okay, so fruits and vegetables and eggs do not need a kosher for Passover symbol. The bottom line is, if also orange juice and certain dairy items like cottage cheese and yogurt, not flavored, but plain yogurt, plain, Rita, you raising your hand? No, you did it again. Okay. Plain yogurt, plain cottage cheese, 100% fruit juice with absolutely no additives in them are all, by definition, kosher for Passover. Now, certain foods are processed in a way that there could be chametz in it, in that process. So, and those foods you can buy before Passover, and if you sell your chametz through me, you are selling that chance of it being chametz in that food, and you can eat that food for Passover. So, for example, milk. When you buy milk, it has vitamin A and D added. You have to go out of your way, probably to a farm, and get freshly milked cow milk to not have the vitamin A and D added. The milk we buy is vitamin A and D. Those are chemicals. The vitamin A and D are chemicals that have chametz, potentially have chametz. It's potential. It's not necessarily reality that it is chametz, but it is potential. So therefore, what you can do with milk, you don't have to buy kosher for Passover milk before Passover, because that's very expensive milk. You can buy milk from any place as long as it says that it's kosher. So most milk that we buy today, I know Safeway milk is kosher, Harris Teeter milk is kosher, Giant milk is kosher. Those brands of milk. You buy those brands of milk, it has a kosher symbol on it, buy it before Passover, you can use it on Passover. Not a problem. As long as you sell your chametz through me, you're selling the potential that there could have been chametz in that milk. Okay, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but this is what I'm saying. That the milk you can do this with, tuna fish you can do this with too. Kosher tuna fish that packed in, and tuna fish packed in water or oil before Passover, that the potential of that processing could potentially have had chametz in it. You can buy it before Passover for use on Passover. Now, these two things as an example, the milk and the tuna fish, you can buy before Passover to use on Passover. You cannot do that during Passover. So in other words, you run out of milk during Passover, you run out of tuna fish during Passover, you cannot buy the non-kosher for Passover milk or tuna fish. You have to buy those items that say kosher for Passover on it during Passover. Coffee and tea is another element here, because it depends the kind of coffee and the kind of tea that you drink. Regular black coffee does not need to have a kosher for Passover symbol on it, okay? Because regular black coffee, whether the bean itself and you have your own grinder, or the already ground coffee, you can buy before Passover without a kosher for Passover symbol on it and use it on Passover. Decaffeinated coffee is different. Decaffeinated coffee is processed. The process used to decaffeinate coffee has chametz in it. And because chametz is used to decaffeinate coffee, you need to have kosher for Passover decaf coffee to use on Passover. Okay, so the decaffeination process is by definition with chametz. Maxwell House coffee, what I saw, if anybody's looking for coffee at Shalom's, Maxwell House coffee that goes into your coffee machine, not instant. I bought the last one off the shelf yesterday at Shalom. So hopefully they restocked, but that's the kind for your coffee machine, not the instant. So that Maxwell House makes kosher for Passover decaf coffee. So you can find, I'm sure you can find in any of the supermarkets, Maxwell House brand coffee. And almost for sure, I'll get to tea in a second, almost for sure, it'll have a kosher for Passover symbol on it. So, but decaf has to have a kosher for Passover symbol. Just kosher is not enough. Tea is the same thing. Plain black, green, or white tea. Plain, not flavored. This goes for coffee as well. Flavored coffee, flavored caffeinated coffee has to have a kosher for Passover symbol on it because the flavoring has chametz in it. So we at our house like hazelnut coffee, and that has to have a kosher for Passover symbol on it. The same is, so flavored tea, right? So if you like, I don't know, peppermint tea that has not just peppermint in it, but also tea in it. Whether it's decaf or regular, flavored tea, decaf or regular, needs to have a kosher for Passover symbol on it. Plain black, green, or white tea, no other additives on it, do not need to have a kosher for Passover symbol. Okay, so that makes shopping a little bit easier. So decaf tea, every single year, the Passover guide that the Rabbinical Assembly publishes says that Nestea brand caffeinated or decaffeinated tea is always kosher for Passover. They always say that on their list. I'm looking through it again now. Yes, Nest tea. It says it right here. I'm looking at it on page 9. No Passover hechsher required. It says right here, Nest tea brand. So you go to the supermarket, you look for Nest tea brand tea, whether it's decaf or regular. It's considered kosher for Passover just because rabbis know that their decaffeination process is chametz free. Okay. Other things that do not need. Yes, Alan, unmute yourself.
Rabbi, we just
Yes.
got notice from Shalom that they're not taking any more deliveries.
Ah, you just you called them and no more deliveries now before.
We got emails from them.
Ah, I see. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so there goes that idea necessarily, so that about getting food delivered. So you have to, if you're afraid about going out to the supermarket yourself, then try to find another way to do that. And I'm not sure I want to volunteer our Chesed committee to do that, because I don't want to put other people at risk or have them make this decision to potentially put themselves at risk to make the delivery. There are other items. Yes.
Marvin just called Larry.
I just called Larry at
Yeah.
Shalom.
Yeah, and
They're not taking any more online orders and delivering because they're swamped.
they're swamped, right? Okay, so Marvin, by the way, is related to Larry. Larry is his nephew, and even with that special
They wouldn't do that
relationship
for
with
me.
Marvin, what?
They wouldn't even do that for me.
He wouldn't even do it for you, his uncle, right?
Fortunately, pre-ordered.
Right. Okay. So yes, so that's making it so you have to go in person to shop. These are other things that do not need a Passover symbol on them because the processing does not involve chametz. Baking soda, they're saying also, they added to this list frozen vegetables, frozen fruit and vegetables you can buy before Passover and use on Passover. Sometimes they're processed, but if it's 100% vegetable or fruit, nothing added to it, perhaps sugar can be added, and that's okay. Only sugar added to it, because sugar you can buy before Passover. There's no additives to that. You can buy that before Passover. Okay. So I talked about these items. So this is what we do with food. Yes, Rita.
Vegetables like canned sliced carrots, can they be used on Passover?
Did you say
Just
canned?
carrots. Carrots.
Carrots,
In a
frozen?
can.
Frozen?
No, in a can.
On a can. No. The problem with canned vegetables and fruit is that they are processed before they are canned. So I think it's impossible to find anything canned that does not have any additives at all. So canned fruits and vegetables need to have a kosher for Passover symbol.
Passover. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So so this is all. So it all comes down to how seriously and how seriously we want to take these kosher for Passover rules, and how realistically we can follow them if we are not able to go to the supermarket ourselves or get food delivered to us. So it means possibly making some compromises in terms of the extent to which our menu is diversified for Passover, or how the process of what foods we're going to allow ourselves to eat. Yes, Rita. Did
I
you?
don't have my hand
Oh,
up.
okay. Yeah, well, you do. So on my screen, okay. So I lowered your hand and I muted you. Okay. So the question is, you'd have to look, if you can't get to a kosher supermarket and you can't get food delivered to you from a kosher supermarket, and you need particular items for your recipes that you plan to cook, it's a matter then of looking at the ingredients. The more ingredients it has listed, the more likely it is that there's chametz in it. So that's the idea there. The less ingredients, the less likely there would be chametz added to that process. So if you can find 100% natural foods without anything added, or perhaps the only thing added is sugar, not corn syrup, but sugar, because corn syrup is chametz. So if it only says sugar, then I would say that that item would be considered kosher for Passover. I would only say that you should do this kind of shopping before Passover. Okay, so I wouldn't say that this kind of compromise would be permitted during Passover. Try to stock up on these things that are 100% natural with no additives in them and use that on Passover. So that would be the compromise that I would say would be permitted for us on Passover. So the decaf, I can't do anything about decaf coffee or tea, but I think those are readily available for kosher for Passover in the supermarket. Okay, you don't have to worry about going to Shalom's and Kosher Mart for that. But what the other items that might be hard to find for Passover because of not getting to Shalom's or Moti's, I would make that compromise to allow you to say, look at the ingredients and look for something that only has sugar as opposed to anything else. And like I said, the more additives, the more likely it is that there's chametz in it, and like real, like I would say in Yiddish, mamish chametz, like real chametz in it, not a chance that there's chametz in it. And so that would be the compromise that I would do. Now, fresh string beans. Yeah, there's always a question, Diane, about string beans. And I'll get to your question about the tea in a moment, Milt. String beans is always a question because it looks like so it gets to the Ashkenazi custom of not eating beans and legumes on Passover. Okay, string beans definitely look like beans. So the question is, should you be allowed to eat them on Passover? I grew up and I still am in a home in which we do not eat beans and legumes on Passover. Sephardic Jews, by the way, do eat them. The conservative movement has allowed us for several years now to eat beans and legumes. So, for example, if you want hummus on Passover, it's made from chickpeas. If you're Ashkenazi, you wouldn't be allowed to eat it. But Sephardim eat chickpeas because it's a bean and they eat it on Passover. You can buy kosher for Passover hummus. Shalom's has it. I saw it yesterday. So you can, if you want to, you can eat that on Passover. But string beans was always this questionable category. I grew up eating string beans on Passover. And I grew up not eating beans and legumes on Passover. So we always had string beans in our house. So string beans, for some reason, is in this category of being allowed to eat on Passover. So no problem with eating string beans on Passover, Diane. Okay, now Twining's English breakfast tea. English, you have to look at the tea, Milt. So I know, for example, Earl Grey tea. Not, I know, yeah, but I can't see that. Tell me in the ingredients, does it have some flavoring there besides tea? Is there anything else in it other than black tea? And if there's anything else in it other than black tea, then that means it has to have a kosher or Passover symbol. Earl Grey tea, for example, is flavored with something called bergamot and some other kind of flavoring. So because of that, it's not kosher for Passover by nature. It has to have a kosher for Passover symbol on it. So these like English breakfast or or Earl Grey. Now, so something like Darjeeling tea. Darjeeling is just a kind of tea leaf. Or orange pico is a kind of tea leaf. So that is, right, okay. So it says 100% pure black tea, milk. So you're perfectly fine. You can use that on Passover. So that's the thing. If it's 100% black, green, or white tea, it's good to be used for Passover. Just don't open that box beforehand. Okay, that's the only thing. It's only an unopened box, because if it's open, there's a chance that chametz can fall inside of it. That's the only reason about having an unopened box. Okay, so I talked about string beans, helped you with your tea. Now back to Diane's question about searching for chametz. Okay, so there is this tradition that is part, and many editions of a Haggadah actually have this in the very front of the Haggadah, how to do the search for chametz and what prayer you're supposed to say. So here's the idea. You're supposed to clean your house of all your chametz to the best that you can. Okay, so even if you're closing off your kitchen for Passover and just using disposable and packaged food, and that's what you're going to eat, closing off your kitchen, you still have to clean your house for Passover. Okay, now you don't have to you have to do the best you can. And this is something that the Rabbinical Assembly came out with today. What if your cleaning people aren't coming to your house that you normally have? You're in a position to be able to afford to have a cleaning person come. And either because you can afford it or because you're not physically able to clean your own house, right? So what can we do? So you do the best you can, okay? You do the best you can. That's all we can do in this circumstance. So you have to do something to show that you're cleaning your house. Try to do something, even if it means just if you're only physically able to wipe a counter. If you do that, you're doing something to show that you are cleaning your house. You want to do the best you can. The ultimate, of course, is to vacuum very carefully, especially in rooms where you eat. Okay, so if you eat in your kitchen, in your dining room, or maybe you bring food up with you to your bedroom, maybe you bring food with you to wherever you're watching TV, whatever it is, all those rooms, wherever you eat food, need to be cleaned as thoroughly as possible. I know some Orthodox people who will actually open every single book on their bookshelf, because if they're reading while eating, a crumb might have fallen into their book. I'm not suggesting that you do that. I just want you to understand that we want to do what is reasonably feasible for us. And the idea behind the cleaning is we want to get rid of the chametz crumbs that are actually in our house. So waving to Stan Kensky. Nice chest there, Stan. Can't see your face. Okay, so after we clean our house, we put all the chametz food away. Tuesday night this year, because Passover is Wednesday, April 8th. So Tuesday night, we lay out chametz around the house. So this is what you want to do. You want big pieces of chametz that won't make crumbs. So if you have crackers or maybe like Cheerios, that kind of cereal that are in one piece that you can see easily, that won't make a crumb, you kind of lay some of these out around your house. And the kosher supermarkets sell these kits for searching chametz. So I actually, that just reminds me, I did not buy that kit yesterday. Totally forgot to buy that kit. You don't need the kit, okay? It comes with a feather and it comes with a spoon and a candle, because the tradition is to search by candlelight. So if you don't have the candle, but maybe you have a leftover Hanukkah candle, because that's exactly what that candle is in that search for the chametz kit, is a Hanukkah candle. You can use a Hanukkah candle. If you have birthday candles, you can use a birthday candle. Amazon still has them, but it depends when Amazon's going to deliver. because Amazon Prime says deliveries aren't happening until April 21st. So they're swamped with deliveries. That's too late to search for your chametz if you're going to buy a chametz kit and it arrives April 21st. It'll be good for next year, but not for this year. So you don't need a special kit. You need a paper bag. You need something to sweep up. It could just be your fingers. If you're using a big piece of chametz, you don't need the feather and the spoon, okay? Even though that's the traditional thing. So when I was in day school, way back when, we brought home this search for chametz kit. They gave it out to all the kids before Passover break, and we got the chametz kit that way. So, so you don't need that. You don't need a feather. You just use your fingers, and the blessing that you say after you collect the chametz and put it in a paper bag is in the Haggadah. Okay, so if you had the kit comes with the blessing, but the front pages of your Haggadah have the formula to say after you pick up all the pieces of chametz and put them in a paper bag, it's a formula in Aramaic, kol chamira v'chamia the ika bir shute, something like that. Every kind of chametz that I have in my possession is now considered like dust of the earth. That's what you're saying as you put it into the bag. So you're saying everything now in my house is considered dust of the earth. So, and then traditionally then, you then in the morning, on Wednesday morning this year, you burn that chametz. So some people can't come to shul. I'm going to be having the study session for the firstborn, and I will be burning my chametz at shul. So at 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, April 8th, I'll have information about this soon. Wednesday morning, April 8th, I will have the study session for the firstborn by Zoom, so you can log in for that. And then I'll be burning the chametz right there, and I'll be reciting that formula. So if you want to burn your chametz at the same time that I do it, then just listen to my formula, and that will absolve you of saying the formula. But you don't need me, you don't need me to do that. If that time doesn't work for you, just open your Haggadah, take your paper bag, and in your sink, burn your chametz. If you're not comfortable doing that in your sink because of the fire that it would produce, but the sink is a safe place to do it, especially if you have a metal sink. Nothing is going to happen if you burn that paper bag of chametz in your sink. So you can do that. If not, if you're not comfortable with that, then empty the chametz into your toilet and flush it down the toilet. And that's totally fine too. Okay, and then throw away that paper bag because that paper bag had chametz in it. Okay, if you don't have a paper bag in your house because you haven't had kids going to school in a long time and you haven't packed lunch for them, so you don't have a paper bag, put it in a paper towel and scrunch it up like that. Put it in a napkin, scrunch it up like that. Burn the napkin in the sink or flush that down the toilet. If you have a sewage system that will handle a paper towel or a napkin. Okay, so I'm not saying, don't say, layman said I can flush my chametz down the toilet. Don't send me your plumbing bill if your toilet stops up because of that. Okay, the chametz, if you have just crackers in there, that can go down the toilet. But the paper towel and the napkin might not be able to go down. So don't blame me for that. Okay, so you have to know your own toilet and your own pipes to know whether your pipes can handle a napkin or a paper towel going down the toilet. Otherwise, just a chametz flushing down. But don't be afraid to burn it in your sink. Okay, that would be the way to do it. And then, while you're burning it, you recite that second paragraph that's in your Haggadah for burning chametz. Okay, so either watch me 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning. I'm doing the study session for the firstborn. That'll last about 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll burn the chametz. So about 9:15 or so, tune in, and you can watch the burning the chametz that way. Okay, so everything else about the Seder, I have, somebody's just calling in right now. Anything else about the Seder, I have prepared already a model Seder. I sent out a video, a link to a YouTube video yesterday. And so you can, that I explain the different parts of the Seder and I go through it. There's also going to be this fantastic resource page. It's actually like a PowerPoint presentation, a number of slides with so many different links for preparing for Passover, ways to enhance your Seder, with activities, recipes, things like that. So that's going to come out by the end of the day. A link to that, and also other links that are for Passover, to enhance your Passover holiday. So be on the lookout for that. It'll come through the Constant Contact. It'll also come through the listserv, and I'll post it on the shul's Facebook page as well. Two other things I just want to highlight before we end for today. One is I sent this out this morning. I sent out a listserv message this morning, so hopefully you saw that, with not only today's Zoom sign up, but also a couple other things coming up. One of them is on Friday. A colleague of mine, Rabbi Julia Andelman, she's great. She runs the conference that I usually go to in January. She works for the seminary for community education for the seminary. She's leading a webinar on how to lead a Seder for the first time, understanding that many people are in this dilemma of having to lead their own Seder. So I highly recommend that webinar. It's free. You just have to register for it, and then you'll get a link to watch the webinar. It'll be great. And so I highly recommend that. That's Friday at noon. And then on Sunday at noon, there's going to be a global Jewish gathering for healing. I sent out a link for that as well. So that from Israel live, some people, along with my classmate and friend, Rabbi Naomi Levy, who leads a startup kind of independent minyan in Los Angeles called Nashuva. They're doing this half-hour global gathering for healing with a number of cantors and other performers. So it should be a beautiful experience. So that's Sunday at noon. So I just wanted you to remember, Friday at noon is the webinar with Rabbi Julia Andelman, which I highly recommend. Sunday at noon is this global gathering for healing, which I highly recommend as well. Friday evening, you can either live stream the 6 o'clock service as usual, or you can Zoom the 6 o'clock service on Friday evening. Okay, any other, right, so Diane said traditional Jewish gifts online has these kits as well. All depends on how soon they'll deliver them. Okay, any other questions about Passover prep that you might have? So I'm going to unmute everybody, and I thought I did.
You did.
Yeah, but some people still have their own microphones muted. I just want to wish a Chag Sameach to everybody. And if you have any questions at all that come up, feel free to call or email me.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
You miss
Happy-
everyone.
Stay well.
You too.
Stay well.
Thank you.